A life can fall apart in the time it takes to open a bedroom door. For one man, the stability of a decade vanished the moment he realized his wife and his business partner had been working to dismantle it. For 10 years, the foundation seemed unbreakable. A beautiful home, a growing business, and a marriage he thought was his greatest achievement. Beside him was Ryan, a friend since college. They had built a company on the promise that they would always have each other's backs. Looking back, the cracks were visible. Emma had become distant. There were phone calls in the middle of the night, and excuses that didn't add up. He watched her smiles vanish the moment he walked into the room, but he chose to believe his own assumptions over his instincts. The reality surfaced on a Friday evening. He came home early from a business trip to surprise her, only to find Ryan's car parked in the driveway. He walked through the house in total silence. He heard whispers and then laughter coming from his own bedroom. When he pushed the door open, the image of his wife and his best friend together replaced 10 years of memories with a single, irreversible truth. Trust is a double-edged sword. It provides the security needed to build a life, but it also creates the blind spots that allow people to operate against you from within your own inner circle. As Emma began to cry and Ryan stumbled through a series of frantic excuses, the protagonist did something they didn't expect. He said nothing. He didn't ask for explanations or demand apologies. He simply looked at them. He turned around and walked out of the house. By refusing to scream or fight, he denied them the dramatic scene they expected. He left them in a vacuum of silence, wondering exactly what he was going to do next. He spent the next 12 hours in his car, watching the sun come up. He replayed every conversation and every lie, moving past the initial shock into a state of total emotional exhaustion. During those hours, he realized that being a victim would cost him everything he had built. He began to look at his situation the way he looked at a failing business. He needed to detach his emotions and focus entirely on the legal and financial levers still in his hand. His betrayers mistook his lack of aggression for a lack of resolve. While they saw a man who was too broken to fight back, he was actually using that time to calculate exactly how to remove them from his life permanently. Ryan understood the daily operations of the business, but Emma had always stayed away from the details of their finances. She knew they were successful, but she had no idea how that success was actually structured. This was the reality of their situation. While they felt like equals in his life, this diagram shows that the protagonist maintained absolute control over every contract, share, and investment. Legally, they were both on the outside looking in. He went home and played the role they expected. He apologized for his reaction and told Emma he wanted to try and fix the marriage. He made himself look weak and desperate for their approval. It worked. Both Emma and Ryan believed he was too fragile to leave them. They settled back into their old routines, convinced that they had successfully navigated the crisis without losing their access to his wealth. Their own arrogance became his greatest asset. By believing they had already defeated him, they stopped looking for threats and walked directly into the legal perimeter he was quietly setting up. While he smiled at dinner, he was meeting with his lawyer in secret. They spent 2 weeks auditing every bank statement and business filing, looking for the specific opening he knew Ryan would eventually provide. The audit found exactly what he expected. Ryan had been siphoning company capital for personal use. This data flow shows the moment the unauthorized transfers began. Using this evidence, he executed Ryan's immediate removal within 24 hours and froze every business account. Ryan's career and reputation were gone by lunchtime. He called the protagonist 23 times that afternoon, but the man he thought was weak never picked up the phone. Emma assumed she would be protected by the divorce. She believed she could simply leave him and take half of the assets they had accumulated over the last decade. She had forgotten about the prenuptial agreement she had signed years before. The legal process was clinical. It stripped her of the house, the lifestyle, and any claim to the company she had helped betray. Emma discovered that her entire financial existence was legally tethered to the man she had hurt. She had traded her long-term security for a moment of betrayal, and now she had to face the consequences without a safety net. Over the following months, the protagonist focused on his own recovery. He spent his time with his son and rebuilt his life around a new sense of peace. He found that he could finally sleep without the weight of anger pressing down on him. Ryan's life continued to spiral. Without the company or his reputation, he couldn't find work in the industry. The man who had once stood as a successful partner was now struggling to stay afloat. The relationship between Emma and Ryan didn't survive the pressure. Without the stolen money to fund their life together, they had nothing left to bond over but the resentment of what they had lost. Emma eventually walked away from him too. Relationships built on a shared betrayal often fall apart once the resources are gone. When the luxury disappeared, Emma and Ryan realized they didn't actually have a future together. They only had a shared history of a mistake. One evening, he saw them at a restaurant. Not sitting together, separate, both visibly aged and exhausted by the stress of their new lives. Emma saw him first. She froze, watching him as if she expected him to stop and gloat, or perhaps show some lingering spark of the pain she had caused him. He didn't stop. He simply gave her a calm, unbothered smile and kept walking. He wasn't performing for her. He genuinely didn't care about her presence anymore. The people who broke you are eventually forced to watch you thrive from a distance. The ultimate success is reaching a point of peace where their actions no longer have the power to affect your world.